Welcome, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Sloot, and I'm the Executive Director of the Atlantic Council for International Cooperation. Before we get started, we want to take this opportunity to acknowledge Treaty 752. I am a white settler. I live and benefit from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Mi'kmaq. By living here, I am bound to support and uphold the treaties of 1752, and I stand with our province's Indigenous people. I'll speak more about Treaty 752 in a moment, but first I'd like to welcome you all to ACIC's annual symposium entitled Just Climate Action, Gender, Democracy, and Local Movements. This year, we've come together to discuss what justice means in the context of climate change, how we as citizens can develop local and global strategies to counteract it, and the structural inequalities that must be transformed for a just climate transition. For those who are not part of our network, the Atlantic Council for International Cooperation is a coalition of individuals, organizations, and institutions working in the Atlantic Canadian region to build and model just, equitable, and sustainable communities locally and globally. ACIC connects leadership across generations by strengthening members and partners, bringing dialogue and building networking and learning opportunities. ACIC also represents and amplifies the voice of Atlantic Canada and connects the Atlantic with other provincial, national, and international stakeholders. As part of our work to strengthen the effectiveness of ACIC members and partners, we strive to provide opportunities and space for peer learning. So the aim of our symposium this year is to strengthen individual and collective capacity and to highlight and celebrate important work being done in the Atlantic. It will also increase dialogue on making connections between the issues and the actions necessary to create a sustainable future, both locally and globally. Participants here today include international cooperation practitioners, youth, Indigenous leaders, local governments, feminists, environmentalists, issue-specific experts, advocates, and academics. Through a series of Iceberg sessions, we will explore what a just climate looks like, who is impacted by climate change and why, and then move on to discuss how together we can create a climate just world. We call them Iceberg sessions because we are asking one question in each panel, just the tip. And we're hoping that all the participants will leave our virtual panels with many more. During our first session up next, our panelists will answer the question, what does a climate just world look like? It's a question that we hope will guide discussion, but it's also a question that asks a lot more. What does a climate just world look like from a gender lens, from a race lens, from an intersectional lens, to youth, to Indigenous communities? Who is currently deciding what a just climate world is? Shouldn't everybody be on board? Why aren't they? What are we currently doing and how do we get to our goal? What is the path? Who should get a say in this path? Do they have a say now? Are you sure? So many questions submerged beneath the 30 minutes we have with you. For what are answers if not birthed by the echo of questioning diverse voices? We chose this year's theme for a number of reasons. We know that the impacts of climate change are dire and that we are at a critical moment in the course of how we respond. We have also committed through SDG number 13 to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. We only have 10 years to go until 2030, and we're not making the progress we would like to see. And though the world is focused on the global pandemic, climate change is not on pause, and we have a responsibility as global citizens to address climate change and aggressively. Our climate action and local movements is therefore critical at this point in time. As we look at the dimensions of climate justice, we start to think about who creates the policies and makes the decisions that impact us globally, and who feels the greatest impacts of climate change. Whether it's Pacific Islanders who will soon be underwater, to farmers that are struggling with food security issues based on droughts and flooding, to those that suffer disproportionately to the rising global emissions, which are reaching record levels and show no signs of peaking. Activists and peacemakers around the globe are fighting for transparency, accountability, and sustainability so that we leave no one behind. Here in Atlantic Canada, we are seeing the impacts of environmental racism every day. And at the moment, as Indigenous fishers fight for their treaty rights, we have seen an appalling escalation of violence in the Sipekne'katik First Nation. As many of you know, on September 17th, the day the Sipekne'katik Nation launched its self-regulated lobster fishery, A multi-day standoff between Indigenous and non-Indigenous fishers led to violence on wharves in Saulnerville and Weymouth, Nova Scotia. The RCMP charged 2 men with assault. On the water, commercial fishers fired flares at Sibaganaggity fishers, blockaded their vessels, and removed hundreds of traps from St. John. As the violence escalated, Indigenous lobster fishers have been threatened by mobs, cars and buildings have been vandalized, and a lobster facility was burned to the ground. We are fortunate today to have Madonna Bernard join our next panel to speak more about this issue. Following that panel, our keynote speaker, Dr. Ingrid Waldron, will speak about environmental racism in Nova Scotia, noting the ways in which we need to acknowledge and dismantle systemic racism in Canada and around the globe in order to effectively combat climate change. We are also joined by panelists who will speak about the impact of climate change in various parts of the world. We have Sister Namutebi Estellina from Uganda Martyrs University, Leah Jepkirui, a community mobilizer from Kenya, Jacinta Rialine and Joshua Fredericks, youth representatives from the South Rupunini region in Guyana, who will help us to understand how climate change is having an impact in the global South. We are also joined by Eddy Perez, the International Policy Analyst at the Climate Action Network, Ashley Copage, a Program Manager at the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq, and Laura Tilley, who's worked with Engineers Without Borders and Extinction Rebellion Youth. I'm so eager to hear the perspectives of these diverse speakers and to hear from those of you here today and tomorrow who join us from Atlantic Canada and around the globe. We look forward to deep discussion and reflection and hope that over the next 2 days we can learn and unlearn together. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Elder Joe Michael. If we were in person, I would take this moment to present him with tobacco and red cloth, but since we're virtual, this ceremony is taking place in person with an ACIC staff member later this week. So a bit about Elder Joe Michael. He has made a lifetime commitment as a pipe carrier and a sacred fire keeper, helping all races better understand Aboriginal culture. He's from the community of Indian Brook, Hants County, Nova Scotia, and is highly regarded and experienced with over 27 years as a police officer in the RCMP and security officer at Halifax Stanfield International Airport. He is also an accomplished professional who exhibits excellent communication and writing skills necessary for formulating and articulating ideas through creative programming and presentation, and demonstrating fair and ethical leadership, which inspires excellence. And to note, his eldest son, James Michael, is a Mi'kmaq lawyer, the first in Nova Scotia. Thank you and welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Are we there?
Yeah, we can hear you, Joe.
Okay.
Keep going.
Thanks. Yeah, there was, I don't know who you were talking to when you were giving that speech there. I had to look around in the room, making sure they were talking about me. So the other thing that I didn't put on there is that I was the Peace and Friendship Coordinator for the Tatamagouche Center. And it took me all over the Atlantic province, and in my talks there, it was cultural awareness, and I spoke a lot about the treaties and stuff like that. So it gave me a wide base in meeting people. It also gave me an opportunity to meet the 7 world leaders involved in with the economic climate change and all this stuff here. So my background goes probably a little further back than what was read this morning, but you know, I'm just a humble person, and I remain that way because it gives more of a credibility, because there's so much to learn about our culture, our treaties, and our way of life, as we have endured over the centuries. So those things are very important for understanding the other culture, and by understanding the other culture of non-Indigenous, the non-Indigenous people can understand our culture. And the biggest thing that what's taken place is, you know, it comes down to one word, and that's truth behind truth. I look at most of the news clippings and comments on Facebook, and I don't see a very it's time that even some of those leaders, they step side issues and stuff like that, and it's kind of it disheartens me that some of them are not listening with their ears and their hearts and open their minds. The treaties are very important to our people, you know, and it goes beyond that. But you know, it's something that our leaders and the people that are in politics and stuff like that, and I think there's something else there, but I can't really make a comment on that, so I'll just leave it like that. It's unfortunate that violence and, you know, no, and it's a touchy situation when people, when you call somebody racist or segment racial, whatever, you know, they become very defensive. There's no doubt, you know. But it's almost like a big dream. You show them back their tapes and you show them back their actions. You know, they will, you know, defend themselves, which is human behavior. They will always defend themselves, okay? And I think there's other issues that are very important. And I think by discussion today, I'm hoping to enlighten and probably put some, I don't know, it'd be dialogue or the truth, but it's truth behind truth that has to be told. And but you can't argue with individuals when there's anger and there's threats, you know, and it's kind of, that's where I am worried, you know. Each morning I go to my teepee and I pray for our people, and I pray for those ones that are being like quickmire, and they get drawn into it. They get very hyped up on stuff that they don't really understand. I pray for our families and our friends, both non-Indigenous and our people. It's taken, I'm trying to look for that English word, it's like a big rock that's rolling down a mountain, and it seems to pick up momentum, and now it's across Canada, where a lot of groups are supporting our people, and I give thanks to them. I kind of know where it's going to end, but I'll pray for that avenue is, we don't see that. We don't see what's going to take place, but I really fear for our fishermen out there and those people that did the damage and all this stuff there. And what the you know, I just keep thinking in my mind that individual, that policeman that was on ATV on the news. He said, we got to make it clear, life protection. Oh, we got to understand. And he kept repeating that. And I wish I was on the air, or I wish I was near communication. I would tell him when those people got blocked in by mobs, where was life protection there? You know, and few other damages. What about the people that were uh, being threatened by flares? It could have hit the boat, could have hit boat where there's engine, gas, or whatever. They could have, they're left alone up there. You know, those things are very important. And this guy said, this officer said, you know, protection of life. Um, you know, at that point, at that point, now, don't get me wrong. At that point, I felt like handling McComb and told him, you know, comb your hair. You know, like you just woke up and take those rose-colored glasses off. You know, but that was just my thought. But those are the things that are occurring, um, and I hope and I pray when I go out and do a smudging, you know, I'm by myself, but the spirits are there with me because my wife was sitting on the step and she said, well, what were you singing? I said, I wasn't singing nothing. I wasn't on no drum. And he said, she heard people sing, you know, and I was, oh, that's interesting. But I did ask our ancestors, when I do that, I asked my ancestors to come in the teepee and said, sit around and give me answers and look what I'm trying to pray for peace and stuff like that. So she heard it, and which is quite interesting that, and she heard that. And so anyway, I just want to just leave it like that because we do have situations that it's going to be far greater than what we think it's going to be. It's just that our comprehensive, our today's thing is going to be. I'm, I'm not. I don't feel good about it. You know, they're disrespecting our culture. One individual was doing smudging there, and it was knocked out of her hand and it was grabbed, and so that kind of shows that there's a time and place where we should do and lighten the sage of fruitgrass and prayer, but not in front of people that are very volatile or angry. They don't know that much about our culture, but we know their culture far greater than they know themselves. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I'm going to just leave it like that because, you know, even one of the MPs mentioned yesterday on when they had his debate there, he's, he accused his woman being, should have said about being racist. And when Canada, for early years, that they were exploited, they were removed from Canada, and that's when the French Acadians were moved out of Louisiana and stuff like that. And so this MP said, what about that? They were kicked out of Canada, but he never told the truth. He never told all the truth, you know, and they wouldn't sign allegiance to the king, and they kept stuff away from what, you know, with the taxes they were supposed to pay through, not through money at that time, but it was through livestock and stuff like that. They failed. They kept that away from them. Not much different from what's taking place now with, you know, with all the, you know, with the black market and few things. I just want to vent a little bit on that. Tell the whole truth. Don't just tell half, so that people will understand. But we're talking about October 21st, 2020. We're talking about that. That's what we're talking about issues today, because history has an awful thing to always come back to us, and it always repeats itself. But it's also repeated that it's a reminder for us how at one point in our history, you know, we looked after their sick, we helped their when they were not welcome, we helped them in many situations, they seem to have forgotten that. And unfortunately, it's about greed, and it's something that they must go back to their historical facts. So, and how and why treaties were signed. But the 1752 treaty that was signed November 22nd, to be on the list. And it goes on and on with the treaties, stuff like that, but that's why the treaties were made, so that you and I, or anybody, to live in harmony, have some tranquility, and understanding that our people have endured so many things. You mentioned my son being first Mi'kmaq lawyer. First Mi'kmaq lawyer. You see how many people, the education, and that's only in 1991. There's 96 recommendations from the TRC. 94 of them are repeated. I feel bad that those recommendations are going to be shelved. And the same thing with other inquiries they made when it comes to restorative justice or justice. Marshall inquiry, when he was convicted, there was a lot of things that were supposed to be brought forward in inquiry. There were shelved in there. So it just seems to be a repeated thing that let's address them and one step at a time and go to the next level. So we got 95 more TRC things and so forth like that. So I just want to make note of that at sometime that there are many educated people. You mentioned Madonna, Bernard. You get people that are very educated in the treaty. As far as me, the day that treaty, hunting rights were, the hunting rights, I was working that day. And then when Donald Marshall was charged for fishing, I wasn't that far away, but it makes you wonder, how come they didn't consult any Aboriginal members? How come they didn't really, it's very frustrating where how justice could have had a different light in this. It's kind of a, it would have been a lot easier when they dialogue or they talk to people or consultation or whatever, But back then, when I was working, there was no such thing as consultation. It was either, it was different. It was a different mindset. And when I did speak up about things, it wasn't until after I retired that all of a sudden policies and procedures starting to change, just in culture alone. But again, they don't know. They may know how to set in the airplane, but they don't know how to fly it. And that's the way I'm looking at it now. You could be a passenger, but you could tell time, but you don't know how to make a watch. What about the person, that could fly the plane and knows what the, they could be a passenger just as much as flying the plane, but they know a little bit more. And I think that's what, that's the path that they have to take. They have to go, and seek such as I can't pronounce Symposium like these, but would they listen? I really don't know. So anyway, that's something that I'm just gonna with little notes and stuff like that. Because I do plan to go back to Academy Center, and hopefully that I could open that door again under the Peace and Friendship coordinator, and reach out not in a mass audience, but I could reach out to either individuals or a group, then the message will be there. I'm quite aware of the protocols and the procedures now. I knew them before, but it's like everything else. We take one step at a time. And there's so many Madonnas out there that know what's taking place. And there's some things that'll never be spoken in public. Those things will always remain there. And but the general public got to be aware of what's taking place, and they got to know that Shubenagati is a stepping stone. I applaud Eloise Amelia. Like I give honor to Mike Sack, him stepping forward, and he is very. He's down there with his people, our people from this community, and giving support and stuff like that. So, and then when I seen that individual grab me, there's nobody should have grabbed. I mean, nobody's going to grab Justin Trudeau or Premier McNeil like that. They won't get that close, but that was a very disrespectful thing what he did to our chief. And it was good that he charged him for assault. But those things, that shouldn't have occurred. And, that's because of a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of miscommunication, and people will I don't know what the word would be. It's kind of hard words, but I think that's what it's like propaganda. They throw that things in there, and I knew before this event happened that I was working and I was by myself. I wasn't 5 or 6 members there. I was sent down there by myself, and they had a flotilla down there, and there was when the decision Supreme Court said they go fishing. This is the second time this happened. Like I said earlier, history repeated itself. I went down there, and they had over, I don't know how many boats in there. They had a flotilla down there, and it was really, really bad, and a lot of acts of violence. And it's kind of the same thing. This already happened before, and the same thing when in Burn Church. The actions of people, and it goes across Canada, not only region, Logan, it goes across where our people have been arrested. If that had to be natives or Mi'kmaq in a very, I know it would have been different. I know it would have been different. Would have been different state of emergency and stuff like that. Our people would be charged and more of enforcement on behalf of the people. This is where I kind of I just stay back and I observe. So it's kind of hard too, because some of the people there got to be educated. They got to be educated in what actions they take. And from what I seen, there was a lot of mockery about our culture, and there was a lot of questions that, they have. But I had, well, for every one question they have, I had 10 questions for that individual. So it kind of makes you wonder, do you know what you just said? And it's kind of hard to explain, but I think we're not going to have a bright future or something that's going to happen. But when I sit in my TP, when I do my smudging, like I said earlier, my wife heard people talking and singing. But their message is very strong, very strong. So I'm going to leave it like that, okay? Thank you. All my relations.
Thank you so much for those wise words, Joe. We deeply appreciate you being here to speak with us today. I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Janelle Frail, who's our Training and Development Manager at ACIC. And just a quick word to say, Janelle is the force behind the symposium. So we'll take an opportunity, of course, to do formal thank yous at the end, but I just wanted to take 2 seconds right now to make sure everyone's aware that the reason that we're all here today is because of Janelle. So over to you, Janelle.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'll take all the glory and all the blame. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Elder Joe. I really appreciate your words. And yeah, I appreciate your time with us today and all of you. So welcome and great to see you all and to have you all here today. Yeah, just want to go over a few more things about acknowledging the land that we are on, and this is a good opportunity for people to try the chat box. So just to say that I'm in Halifax today, which is also known as Jabuktuk, and I encourage you all to write in the chat box where you are, and I think it's important to recognize the land we're on, whose land it is, and saying that, yeah, in Nova Scotia, it's the land of the Mi'kmaq. And that, like I said, Halifax was once known as Jabuktuk. And so this is, for me, a reminder to keep working on the truth and reconciliation on Turtle Island, also known as Canada, and Elder Joe spoke about that. So yeah, feel free to write in the chat box now where you are in the world if you know the Indigenous name. And to start us off, we're going to do a few polling questions. And the first one, because we are doing Iceberg sessions and the theme of our symposium is a just climate transition, our first polling question is around how are you feeling today using images of various climates. So I'm just going to start sharing that on the screen. So we have 6 different options for how are you feeling today? How are things going? So you can move that polling box that might be right in the front of the images. You can move it to the left or right by dragging it left or right. So you can see we have A for volcano, a B for hurricane, C is a calm, relaxed beach, D is an iceberg, E is the fall leaves turning color, and F is a fire tornado. So vote now. How are you feeling today as we start into this session? We'll give a minute for people to vote. Great. And then the next question is, where are you participating from? You know, one of the pluses of COVID is that we're having the symposium online, and people from all over the world have registered. So where are you voting? Or where are you voting from? Where are you participating from today? So you can click on one of those options: Atlantic Canada, Central Canada, Western Canada, Northern Canada, Mexico or USA, Central or South America, Africa, Asia, Europe, Oceania. And the last question for everyone What is your primary affiliation? What is your connection to this work? Are you in the nonprofit sector? Are you in academia, a student or a professor? Are you in the private sector? Are you an interested individual, or are you other? So you can submit that now. Okay, so we're going to end the poll now and see some results. Okay, so most people are feeling like fall leaves turning color. I'd like to interpret that at some point. That'd be interesting. And where are you participating from? The vast majority of you are in Atlantic Canada, some in Central Canada, Africa, Asia, and your primary affiliation, academia, and then also some from the nonprofit sector or interested individuals. So thank you for that. So next up, just a few Zoom housekeeping items. A reminder that you can follow ACIC on social media and sign up for our newsletter. And you can check the chat box for those links and click on each one. As you've already tried out the chat box, you can introduce yourself and say hi. And you can also, and also to say that in the background, I have Jackie and Roshni. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Roshni, as tech support today. So wouldn't be able to do it without the full team. And we're recording the sessions, and everyone will be emailed all the recordings next week. And also I wanted to say that ACIC stands for respect, inclusion, equity, humility, safety, and solidarity. And we will not tolerate any communication or behavior opposed to these. So please keep all those in mind when interacting with each other in the chat box, in breakout rooms, and on our social media channels. And also I wanted to say a shout out to some special youth who are here today. That's a youth delegation that ACIC is working with. So hi, everyone. You can wave if you're on the screen. It's good to see you. And really glad to have you here. Our first session will be moderated by Corinne Cash. And so I'm gonna give a bit of her bio, and then she'll be able to present the other panelists. So Corinne is a senior program staff and lead with Building Resilient Communities program at the Coady International Institute, and an associate professor in climate environmental program at St. Francis Xavier University. Dr. Cash has a master's in environmental studies and a PhD in planning, both from the University of Waterloo. Dr. Cash's work has primarily focused on how communities are impacted by land use decisions, including issues of social justice and equity that emerges as a result of decisions made. And part of this involves examining how climate changes impact people differently at the local level, dependent on one's race, gender, age, and/or socioeconomic class. Dr. Cash has worked throughout Southern Africa, on the Asian continent, and with Indigenous communities in Canada. And she is the co-author of Water, Energy, Food, and People Across the Global South, the Nexus in an Era of Climate Change. And that was written in 2018. I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Cash.
Thank you, Janelle. And thank you, Joe, very much for those wise words. It's certainly very troubling times right now in Nova Scotia. So the format today, I'm going to introduce each speaker, and they will speak for 5 minutes, and then we will do one round, and then we will go around and hear from each speaker again for 5 minutes. But first, I'm going to introduce Kukuwes Wowkis, a colonial name Madonna Bernard, and she is from Unama'ki, Cape Breton. She is a mother, grandmother, and a protector, not a protester. She comes from a line of warriors. Her great-grandfather was Grand Chief Gabriel Sillaboy, and her uncle was the late Chief Stephen Barnard. She was part of the Rexton battle in Essy-Buktuk against Swin, was charged and won their case in court. She was part of Protect Lake Ainslie against Petroworth. Again, they won. She's currently in court against Alton Gas and Stewiacke, and now she is part of the battle against the non-native commercial fishing in Digby. I'm going to read a quote from her. She states, I stand by people and our rights because it is woven into our DNA to do just that. I stand by my people and I will defend our rights because these are not just rights. These rights are specific and is meant to protect future generations to come, not just for me or you, but for our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. We once was given a quote by an elder and she stated, use the KISS formula, which is keep it simple, stupid. Now we're going to hear from Kukuwes.
Hi, how are you guys today? Again, my name is Kukuwes Wowkis, and I'm from Unamagi, and right now we're battling in Digby, Nova Scotia. I don't know what else to say, but it's the justice system is doing things so illegally and unjust that it's ridiculous what's happening down there with the RCMP, with the DFO, and with these commercial fishermen. You can plainly see all the racism that is happening down there, and it's sickening to see this, especially in 2020. We stood there protecting our fishermen and their boats, and these cops didn't do nothing to stop these commercial fishermen from coming in and cutting the traps. The DFO sat out there in the water just watching on. And I'm sorry if I do swear, because we are hurt, we are pissed off. And this government is not doing nothing for us. This government is just laying back and letting these commercial fishermen do this to us. When we fought in Stewiacke against Alton Gas, they had like 50 cops on us, and they probably were going to send in the military next. That's what happened in Rexton. When we were up in Rexton, they sent in the military to come after us. If this was all turned around, and if we were the commercial fishermen doing all this, everything would be, the military would be there and stuff. So you can see the plain, simple ugliness of this justice system that we have here in Canada. And I know I hear a lot of my allies saying they're so sickened by what the government of Nova Scotia is just standing by there and doing fuck all. And we're there. We're protecting our fishermen, their traps, but yet these commercial fishermen are saying they're talking about conservation. They're cutting the traps and leaving the traps in the water. That's not conservation. You know, everything that we're doing it in a great way, and everything we do, we followed our laws, our sacred 7 teachings. And you know, it hurts us to see this happening to our fishermen and fisherwomen out there. But you know what? We stand strong. We stand strong and tall, and we will not back down. We will never go away. We're still here, and we'll be here forever. I know I sound really upset, because I am. Right now, I'm currently in St. Peter's at the wharf, and this is why I do apologize that I have to leave. We're standing here waiting for the DFO, because our fishermen are still out there and they're still fishing. And we have to do what we can do to protect our men and our women out there. You know, and everything we're doing is legal. We're not doing anything wrong. And I don't understand why DFO, the government, and the cops aren't doing their goddamn job to fucking protect us. You know, this is a piss off. And I'm sorry, I'm mad. I'm really upset and mad. And our treaty of 1752 was won in the Supreme Court, and that was legally binding. My great-grandfather, that was upheld in the Supreme Court too. It took many, many years for that to be upheld, but it was. And I don't want my grandchild to go through this. This is why we're doing what we're doing. My son is down there in Digby right now, and my nephew. They're down there standing to protect the fishermen and women. And I was down there all month. I just got back home just recently, and as you can tell, my voice is very bad. That's from yelling and screaming. I don't have COVID. I just got tested for that. And if any of you guys want to follow me on, I don't know how to follow me or add me on Facebook, it's Kukuwes Wowkis, WOWKIS. That's the only way you can really get in contact with me, but you have to message me and let me know who you are and where you heard me from. I don't really know what else to say, but I know I have to get down to the wharf there. People are starting to gather down there. So if you got any questions, just forward them to my message on Facebook. I'm not quite sure what else you guys want to hear from me. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much for your words, and we want you to know that we are supporting you, and we'll be thinking of you for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys very much, and I'm sorry I have to get down to the wharf now. And I love all of you guys. I love our allies, and I love all the support that we're getting from our allies, and it's freaking awesome. And if you really want to do anything, attack them on social media. Love you guys, and peace out.
Thank you.
Madonna,
Yes, go ahead.
Udalagan.
All right, Tui, Joe.
All right, go start and again.
Oh,
Muchas nada, muchas.
Okay, Joe, no multas.
All right, yeah, well on.
Hello, yeah.
Next, our next speaker is Sister Estellina Namutebi. She's a lecturer and head of the Department of Development Studies in the School of Arts and Social Sciences of Uganda Martyrs University. She's also the founder of the Experto Environmental Learning Center in Uganda, a member of the Afro-Asian Women Network, and a biodiversity conservationist. She's a global change leader. 2015 cohort trained at the Coady International Institute of St. Francis Xavier University in Amish, Canada. She is an experienced action researcher in Indigenous tree species reforestation. Sorry, my screen just went away. Reforestation as an adaptation measure to climate change, with more emphasis on grassroots participation. Loves teaching and guiding young people in discovering their roots and self-identity. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Ethics and Development Studies from Uganda Martyrs University and a Master of Arts degree in Environment, Development and Peace with a specialization in Environmental Security and Governance from the UN-mandated University for Peace in Costa Rica. Thank you for joining us today, Sister Estellina.
Thank you very much, Corinne.
And
I'm presenting.
I'm just going to, before you, I just wanted to say that that you will speak for 5 minutes, and then I will give you the sign when 5 minutes is up.
All right, thank you very much. I think everyone can see the screen I have shared. I'm going to talk about climate just. According to me and my own community, both at the university as well as my community of Experito Environmental Learning Center in the central region of Uganda, Nalutuntu sub-county. We know climate change as a holistic tool, climate just as a holistic tool used by local communities to enable equal utilization of resources of economics, ecosystem services without discrimination. So this tool is used within communities to find ways of really sharing the ecosystem services without anyone stopping them. But when you look in the picture, something is different. It is not a savanna grassland. It is supposed to be a semi-tropical region. But then all the forests have been cut down. And now the local communities are actually made up of mostly farmers. How can they survive? And we know that there are several types of ecosystem services, but the basic four are the provisional services. We understand that both terrestrial and aquatic biodiversity give us all the things we need for income generation and self-sustenance as wood, medicine, air, food, and water. But the way we get that is totally different from the way we are supposed. So we consume a lot without controlling ourselves. So we are becoming stewards who are not responsible in some instances. However, some of the farmers are doing something. We have the cultural services, cultural ecosystem services, where we have spiritual benefits, aesthetic and aesthetic inspirations. These are non-material benefits. They are people who feel inspired by the environment, inspired by the trees, inspired by forests, inspired by everything. But these are things that are dying out. And from this inspiration that the climate just tool enables people to make crafts, make things that can help them actually gain income in the provision services. And the regulatory service ecosystem services we have are intangible. You know, we get clean water without knowing where it's coming from. In the picture, you can see what happens when it rains in my community. So we have all this water flooding close to the habitat we have created within our community. It's a habitat of indigenous tree species to try revive the ecosystem. And so we understand that in the regulatory services, the environment maintains the balance without us paying it. So it's our bounden duty to support and protect all this as community members. And so the supporting services for all these are the services that are free, that maintain the diversity within, because as human beings, we are part of the diversity, and as well the living spaces. We live together with biodiversity in harmonious way. We are trying to do that. Even though we are trying to do that, but still we have serious challenges. One of the community members shared was actually, that is Muzei Kabanda in the picture, trying to talk with the community organizer, showing what is happening with to his beans. He was supposed to have a good yield, but because of the change in the rainfall seasons, he's not going to get what he really wanted to get. You know, the climate just tool is not only for farmers only, but also it touches the policies that enable people to freely share these ecosystem services. But Ms. Nakabili shared that many of these policies are corrupted. I should say that Uganda has the best policies, but most of these policies are not implemented. Why? Because you're going to find many people today are building in the swamps, yet we have policies that are prohibiting people to build in the swamps. So the evident dangers we have to climate just today are the human activities like deforestation, air and water pollution, as well as littering. You can see what is happening in the picture. We have to clear the land to so that we can plant seasonal crops. And
Hello,
one of the
Sister Estellina, I'm sorry I have to stop you there, but we will we'll get back to you.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up is Eddy Perez. He is the International Policy Lead for Climate Action Canada and has worked in the network since February 2018. He has a master's degree in science from the Institut National de Recherche Scientifique of oh no, he has a master's degree in science from the Institut National de Recherche Scientifique, Quebec. While completing his master's, he worked at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in Geneva. Currently teaches at the Université de Montréal on international climate cooperation and justice and climate diplomacy. Eddy is an expert on climate finance and is the co-chair of the Canadian Coalition on Climate Change and Development and a member of the Canadian Environment Domestic Advisory Group under the Canada-EU CETA. In 2014, he organized a Pan-American project to engage a discussion about climate change realities. In 1 month, he visited 12 countries using only public transportation. Wow, as an urban planner, that's very impressive. And met with almost 15,000 people from different parts of the American continent. And Eddy, you will have 5 minutes before we'll go to the next speaker. Go ahead.
Thank you, Corinne, and thanks to the organizers of the Atlantic Council for International Cooperation, Jennifer, Elder Joe. I am in Tiohtià:ke, which is commonly known as Montreal in Quebec. Climate Action Network and myself, we stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples and the Mi'kmaq community as they go through this very difficult moment. I was very humbled while I was hearing to Elder Joe, and I think one of the words that he mentioned really resonates with me, which is humility, a moment of humility. And so my comments are going to be short and take this 4 minutes to say 3 main things. And so the question that was asked to me was, what does a climate just world look to you? And the response for me is, for me, there's not such a thing as a climate just world. For me, a just world is a climate safe world. And so one thing goes with the other. We can't speak about safety without considering and tackling the climate crisis and all the inequalities that are attached within. And so I guess I don't need to tell you about, the fact that this COVID-19 has revealed and exacerbated and amplified inequalities that have existed in our societies for so long, but that now, because our lack of preparedness, we haven't been able to tackle. And so I think one thing that we have learned through this COVID-19 pandemic is that we can't speak about climate action if it's not based in a justice lens manner. And that leads me into the second point of it, which is climate change did not stop during COVID. Many reports have been published last week that shows that disasters have increased, the temperatures continues to increase, and that there is, we're seeing all over the world resistance when it comes to responding to several crises at the same time. We're seeing that developing countries in the South are tackling with increasing amounts of debts, incapable of responding to their own emergencies within their health systems, and at the same time making sure that they adapt to the increasing impacts of the climate crisis. And that leads us into a moment of honesty. The climate movement itself is going through a moment of honesty right now. We need to be honest about the lack of preparedness, but also the lack of willingness to tackle this in an intersectional manner, to speak about climate justice as an intersectional way where we talk about gender lens climate action, when we speak about upholding Indigenous rights, when we talk about making sure that there's no discrimination in the way in which we try to adapt and respond to this climate crisis. And so I think that leads me into believing that as we move forward, both at the domestic and at the international level, we focus a lot on what's happening at the international. Well, climate action in itself, more than ever, particularly because this COVID-19 needs to be community-led, because it is the communities who are feeling the differentiated impacts of the climate crisis. It is there where we can link together how health and climate are both combined. And I think, Indigenous leaders and Indigenous nations have been telling to us for years, and we're starting to realize that if we want to respond to future crises, the intersectional approach, community-led, respecting others, making sure that we stand in solidarity with other groups, and making sure that we also address other types of injustices, that is the way in which we're going to move from a climate action perspective towards a climate justice perspective. Climate Action Network has been working domestically and internationally in a transformational approach and learning from Indigenous communities in Canada about ways in which we could also speak differently and act differently in a way that we talk about our just recovery that is transformational from a climate perspective, in a way that we design the world we want, so that while we are trying to influence governments into doing better, we also make sure that we amplify the voices of those who are most impacted by the injustices of our systems. We're also making sure that we don't speak about climate as an isolated item. We need to speak about health, co-benefits, and the way in which, if we want to really tackle the climate emergency today, the first thing that we need to think is that we can do that if we continue to put violence into our biodiversity. Finally, the only thing that I would say is that moving forward, this COVID has told us, and we have been also hearing this by Indigenous leaders, is that climate action and the ambition of climate action is based into three main things. We need to think about how climate justice is accessible for communities, and the structures in which we can provide accessibility for climate justice. But as we move into a transition towards a low carbon future and net zero future, we need to make sure that it's also affordable and lastly, sustainable. These three pillars are those that can help us shift away from where we are towards a world that fights, resists to the current inequalities of the current systems, and build pathways that can help us stand solidarity towards other communities and peoples in Canada and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Leah Jepkirui. She works with women groups in Nandi County, Kenya, to mobilize resources to teach them from the benefits of owning a biodigester. Biodigester units help to reduce greenhouse gases, reduce stress on forests, and promote a clean environment. In addition to these benefits, women in Nandi County use biodigesters to grow kitchen gardens, where they plant organic vegetables and other income-generating products to support their livelihoods. Biodigesters create bioslurry, a product which reduces the need to buy synthetic fertilizers, and an example of a smart technology that has been adopted locally. If given a chance, these women will feed the entire country. Go ahead, Leah. I think you're on mute if you're speaking.
Yes, my name is Leah from Kenya. I work within Nandi County. That is a small province in Kenya. Majorly, I want to discuss much on climate change. In Kenya, we are much affected with the climate change because most of the farmers who are doing growing crops in Kenya are really affected, much because of the drought and lots of floods that is moving around in Kenya. This is just because of the changes in the weather patterns. For instance, for the first 4 years, we've been experiencing a lot of rainfall that is different from what we've been experiencing in the past. And this has really affected our farmers, especially the women that I'm dealing with, because women grow most of the crops and they depend upon the crops to feed their children and all the livelihood. So in Kenya, if we see this climate justice is really creating a problem, and we want to address it in a way that we can see all the policies that is set above should be addressed. In the past, we had lots of floods, especially in the recent past. We had Nakuru, where we are experiencing even the children are not going to school because of the floods that is moving around in the schools. And more so, the farmers are really affected. Their animals cannot graze because there are floods everywhere. And if we address this as farmers, we really help, we'll really see the future in Kenya. More so, in the past, we had Wangari Maathai in Kenya. He really he started a movement that was called Greenbelt Movement. The movement responded much to the needs of rural women who reported that their streams were drying up, and the food supply also was less. That's being there's a food security issue, and we need to go further and see how we can help the women in Kenya to help them feed their children and change their livelihoods. For what we are doing at the moment is that we are helping women create greenhouses to control mulch environment for the crops. If we have rainfalls, much rainfall that is falling, if we do a greenhouse crops, if we put the greenhouses that the farmers will put their crops inside, they really are going to control the crops inside, and you are going to get enough food, and the supply of food and the demand that is in Kenya will be fed by women. More so, what we are experiencing now in Kenya is heat waves, floods, storms, and extreme weather events that in Kenya people have faced, loss of livestock due to drought, deaths, missing people, diseases. Man-made things are really affecting us. And for example, my colleague from Uganda was discussing about the deforestation. We are much, we want to deal much on deforestation. And that is why we are doing biogases, or biodigester, that will help farmers put in, get their gas, and then they'll not be felling trees. Because deforestation are just transferred from people who are felling trees. They're looking for fuel, that is firewood, that is used in Kenya to cook. And by stopping that, we want to introduce a biodigester that will help the farmers put in the biodigesters to help them get biogas, that is the gas that comes from the biodigesters, and also the bioslurry that comes from the bio-waste that comes from the biodigesters. So what we are doing majorly in Kenya is that if we really see the policy that is enacted by our leaders, and then they really include the women in the local communities to participate and help the women participate, because they are the people who are affected much in Kenya. They're really affected because they live in marginalized places. Women do many work and they move around much. They work very much. They go around looking for fuel like firewood. So if we see that the policies that enacted by the leaders in Kenya getting involved with the women, it's going to help us more. So what we are discussing much is we need to see these women are really help, because they are not included in the policies. And by including them in the policies, you're going to see them, we're going to help them get out of those, the marginalized places, and get empowered from other things that they cannot get from the village, from the community. So what we are doing as a personal ground is that we want to discuss and get the women in board to help them come through, discuss what they are seeing it is a problem to them, and remove them from doing many things that is affecting the climate change. Because if they fell the trees, it's going to affect them, and it's going to create a problem globally, and it's going to create a problem also in Kenya. That will not help us much.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to let all the panelists know that we're just going to ask you to give 2 minutes of some concluding remarks, and then we are going to take questions from our virtual audience. Next up then is Estellina. Do you want to give us 2 minutes of a concluding remarks, please?
Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to say what we are doing in my community is reforestation, which we started in 2014 up to today. We are trying to reforestate indigenous tree species, as well as fruit trees, and we are working together not only with the community members, but also the school children as well as the university students, especially teaching them to go back to their roots and see what their ancestors used to do that we can also do in order to achieve the development that is not going to affect the environment, because it is from the environment that we get our livelihood. So if we destroy it, there is no way we are going to survive. So we are doing our best to make sure we support the environment, with all the activities that are better, activities that are pro-environment. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, sister. Next, Eddy.
Thank you, Corinne. Yeah, I think my only very quick message is, we're living through very troubling times, and I guess communities, we're seeing that in Canada. We're rallying and working together, and solidarity, I think, is what is gonna unite our voices. But I guess that leads me into the kind of vision that I want to share with all of you today, which is we need to build hope through resistance. And I think that is the kind of vision that I'm seeing right now. We need to resist the kind of system of inequality that are really putting pressure into the communities and those marginalized groups that are trying really hard to protect the land, the water, the air. And through that resistance, that is what leads us into hopeful action, that we could deliver change, and a change that resembles us. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, will you give us some
Yes.
remarks, please?
Yes. What I will say is seeking justice for the situation that we find ourselves in will really help us, because most people are undergoing situation that is so bad, and there are people who can help. So the only thing we can do is if we get justice for the situation that people are, it's going to help them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is just a reminder for anyone who has any questions, please feel free to type them into the chat. I don't see any questions yet, so maybe I will give you some of my thoughts on what I've heard today. I find it, I often think about this connection or this disconnection between the prevailing powers of government and of power holders, of those with money and their corporate allies that create the systems, the neoliberal system that we're in. And I'm just wondering, and you've all talked about local movements and what's happening on the ground, local action. So I'm just wondering how to scale up some of these local actions, like we have the biodigester and we have other local actions. So how can we actually scale these to some kind of a transformational change? Would anyone like to answer that, Leah or Eddy or Estellina?
The only thing that I would say to that is that, an organization, a network like ours, Climate Action Network, which works around the country and globally in about 130 countries, I think scaling up is the least we can do. Climate Action Network, and this is our commitment as part of being part of the climate movement, our job and responsibility is to amplify those voices. The climate movement in itself has many times worked in isolation to what's happening elsewhere. And this might be the case for other sectors as well. But now I think, we're going through a moment where if we don't bring those messages together, if we don't make the effort to amplify voices, particularly those who need to tell us their story, so that those stories could shape the way in which we talk about not only climate policy, but also how power dynamics are affecting them. If we amplify those voices, that is the best way for those messages to be included into the decision-making processes, within civil society, but also when we speak with government. So, you know, I think that is the best way. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there.
Thank you. Leah or Estellina, do you have any ideas about how to make your projects at the community level, how they can become larger, or how to increase the scale of some of the climate projects you're seeing on the ground?
For me, I think the only thing is if we come together as an international group, then we discuss on how to mobilize these resources to come together. Like, for example, there's a Canadian NGO that is called Run for Life. For once, they are doing they are singing up boreholes to help the women who are affected much on the drought. So when they get their wells, they can do irrigation for their farms. So in coming up with the biodigesters, if we mobilize resources by meeting a group that will help the women come together, then they are given they do a cost sharing in helping them construct the biodigester. That will really help, because if you get 100% of women who are using biodigesters, they won't go to the forest getting trees. That way we are going to reduce their deforestation. Thank you.
Thank you. I have another question from Leah, actually, for Leah, sorry. Can Leah perhaps speak about the way her community builds trust and involves government in coalition building?
Sorry?
We have a question for you. Can you speak about the way that your community builds trust and involves government in coalition building? So how do you involve government in your projects and in the work that you do?
Normally what we do, we register a group that is registered through the government, the government office. So when we have a certificate that is registered, we then get group members. Then we go to an office that is funded by the government. We are given information. The officers come to the ground. They teach the women on group dynamics, on how to go about on the groups, what is going to affect the group, how are the members going to behave. So when the government gets involved in the group and they're working with the groups in helping them build the good dynamics for the group, that is where the government now is going to help, because if they see the trust that you have by showing yourself how you can manage the projects that you are given, and then for instance, now you are given like some money by the government. They want to see how you are going to use that money. When they see that you are using money wisely and you are using money purposely for the purpose that you are intended to, then they give you some money on top. So that is a way of building the trust to the government. Because if you use your money, the money that you are given by the government wisely, then that is the way to build the trust with the government and the group that we are in the community.
Thank you. I see a question here from Sylvie Waugh or Roy. I'm not sure which you use, maybe Waugh, I'd say. Hi, Sister Estellina, Eddy, and Leah. Thank you all very much for sharing your work and experiences. What can we do to build coalition and increase allies to scale up the work being done to promote environmental sustainability?
Thank you, Roy, and thank you, everyone. There is no way we can actually promote environmental sustainability without a base. So what we are doing, first of all, in my own community, what we do is building the base with the young generation, because it's the young generation that are going to take up the sustainability, even when we are not there. So the basic is that we have to begin with the young generation, and then the young generation at the elementary schools as well as the university, so that they are able to network with others, and then we work together in a bid to promote environmental sustainability. Thank you.
for my case, I think we're working with women because the women who are doing things on the ground. So when you work with women, women are the best people to work on the ground. They know the pain. They undergo many tasks in the village. For example, in my community, women are doing a lot of things. So if you involve women, that is the best way to go, because they are there. Mostly 50% of the women in the community are not employed. So they depend on what they are doing within their community, and more so in their home compound. So they do work more so in the compound. So if we are involve them in doing many things, that is the way to go.
Yeah, so I agree with Sister Selena about the base, and I would just say, since April of 2020, Climate Action Network started working with other groups and coalitions on what does it mean to recover from COVID-19, and that was a very important but also difficult exercise where we went through 3 challenges. And the first one is because we wanted to build a coalition, we also had to recognize that not everything was about the climate movement, and we had to give in, to listen more, to stand in solidarity to what's happening out there, to see how others are being feeling the impacts of the COVID-19, but how we could maybe try to rally around the vision. And I think when we speak about sustainability, the 2 challenges are, the first one is connecting the different crises we're in, making it personal, but also giving in, hearing more of the stories and perspective of other people within other communities and other groups. And I'm going to share the link to the Just Recovery campaign that we did, but I'm also going to share the other campaign, which the network at the international level worked in, which is The World We Want. And I think that is the other element of this part of the story, which is we need to think about that. We need to say it. We need to make sure that that message is out there. And I think that is a challenge right now, to design that world based not only on the emergencies and the urgencies that we're responding that now, but on the stories of resilience that are part of our daily life today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone for your participation today. In conclusion, I have to admit I'm quite angry these days on a personal level. I'm seeing what's happening in Nova Scotia, seeing what's happening across Canada and across our world, and it continues to be the people who do the least amount of harm that suffer the most, whether it's from the COVID crisis, whether it's from climate change. And what we're seeing right now in Nova Scotia around the fisheries is just horrific. And it's again a symbol of the systemic racism that we're seeing here in Nova Scotia. And I also just feel like the forces and the powers and those who write the big checks to government, those in corporations and government, their power is very strong. But I do find it heartening to hear from people like Estellina and Leah and Eddy and Joe, and certainly to hear the movement that's happening in Digby right now. And it gives me hope that maybe over time our voices will become louder and louder and louder until transformation is made. And so with that said, I just want to thank you all for participating today. And I just want to wish you the best of luck with the rest of your conference. Janelle, did you want to say anything before we end?
Hi there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Corinne, for doing that. And thanks, everyone, for bearing with us with the timing. So right now, in 2 minutes time, we next have Dr. Ingrid Waldron speaking. She'll be doing a keynote presentation, and there'll be lots of opportunity for questions and answers from her. And so in the chat box, this will be the link for the next session starting at 2:30. So you can click on this session and go right to it right now. So a big thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you at the next session.